Okay, perfect. All right, welcome to week 2, topic 2, so that's easy enough. We're going to be looking at communication skills. And at the end of the lesson, I'm just going to give a little bit of a, we're going to just have a bit of an answer question time with regards to assignment 1, just for some of the students online, and if there's any resubmissions required, okay? I know that some of you have some questions, so we can address that towards the end, okay? And if you don't understand something, please stop me and say, you know, you're talking too fast, because I do talk too fast. Some of my previous students know that. So just say, Robin, I didn't quite understand that, and we can then pause and kind of reflect on that. Okay, all right. So for those that weren't in class last week, and for some of the external students that are joining us for the first time, consult with clients, you'll see that it's the initial meet and greet, or the initial start of a project. This is where you will be able to actually address a client for the first time, or a client addresses you. Usually a client gets in contact with you, and that can be via email, phone call, or personal contact, as explained in the last video. So you'll have other units that you'll actually come across what we are actually speaking about as a base, or they touch on that. So sometimes you will think to yourself, why has this been reiterated again? Well, practice makes perfect. So in other words, what we are saying in this class is reiterated in other units, okay? So if you've got the grasp or understanding of this unit, then that will help a lot. So this is where you get your project information, and hence why 1A is all about research before meeting with the client. You need to be able to understand the location of the project, so that the client might not even know about that. So when you're actually meeting with the client, you know, the setting down an appointment, then you can actually bring certain things forward and say, you know, have you thought about this? Or when the client says to you, I want parking in the front of the building at Cumberland Hotel, you're going to be able to say, well, there is a constraint on that, or the, what can I say, the council does not allow it. So you need to be one step ahead. That's always what I've tried to practice, and it's very difficult in this industry, is to always be 2 steps ahead of your clients, okay? So they might know a lot about their project, but they also need someone like you to be with expertise, etc., to be able to assist them further. All right. So hence why you did have to do research and understanding the location, because some people said to me, well, what's this got to do with it? And that is the crux of really getting 2 steps ahead of your client. And especially knowing that from the information they've just quickly produced, the photographs, you can see there's some compliant issues. There's also constraints on the environment there, as well as restraints. So those are the things that we need to be 2 steps ahead with. Okay. So today's lesson is actually going to be quite interesting. I'm quite passionate about this. And for you, it really helps you to help you with your next assignment, or I say assignment, sorry, assessment. But with that being said, it's really a way of how to communicate. Very, very important. Anyone can communicate, all right? But it's how you actually connect with that person, okay? So that's very, very important in that sense. So we're going to be looking at a short YouTube clip, which looks at 5 different ways to communicate. And this is certainly some key points that you could pick up, especially if you haven't actually met with a client for the first time. This will definitely assist you in your confidence in being able to address a client professionally and be able to come across looking confident. Very, very important. Okay. So this session is all about communication, and of course this will help you when we actually do assessment 1B, and that is with regards to meeting with the client of the Cumberland Hotel. So you're going to have a 15-minute slot session, which I will give you in week 3, which is next week, to assign. I'm just going to keep it simple. It will be in this class time. This is face-to-face. With external students, we're going to be looking at during week 4 and 5, and there's going to be different slots throughout that time where it best suits you. And in that sense, I will be in the meeting and I'll be assessing, whereas you will be asking the questions and the client will be providing you with information. And with that observation, because it is an observation that I'm doing, I am looking at how you present yourself. So I'm looking at the way you're dressed, the way you ask the questions, the tonal value. There's a whole lot of aspects involved. Not to get you nervous, but that's why we're having this session, so that we can prepare for that. Okay. So a lot of you, this was mentioned in my previous class with regards to language. We're not looking at language in terms of speaking with an accent or anything like that. We just want to know if you can be able to come across confidently. Because ultimately, that really is your sell, okay? Believe it or not, even though you're not selling a product and you're selling a service, we are actually selling, we are selling a service, correct? We're not selling a product, okay? Unless you've designed something that is of furniture or something artistic. But basically, in this industry, we are looking at selling ourselves, basically. We are a presentation of our service, okay? So in that sense, a client will create a rapport with you to connect, and that's very, very important, because if they like you from the beginning, irrespective of price, this happens sometimes though, irrespective of price, they'll go with you because of who you are, because they have that connection. And that's the thing that I'm trying to get at. Anyone can communicate, but it's really about having that connection. Does that make sense? Yep. So in industry for myself, that was the actual starting point of knowing if I had the client or not. And you'll see with body language, people have a very high percentage of connecting with someone, and then only about 7% with communication. So that's quite interesting. They will first judge you, and that's a terrible word, but they will judge you immediately within a couple of seconds. And with that, it's either an icebreaker or not. Okay. All right, so enough of me talking. Let's get into watching the video. All right. Oh, that will be great. There we go.
Ways to improve your communication skills.
Connecting increases your influence in every situation. For the foundation of the teaching today, I want to make sure that we really have a grasp of why connecting with people is so vital. So if you go to the very first sentence in your note, the number one criteria for advancement and promotion for professionals is an ability to communicate effectively. That I do believe. I think the ability to connect and communicate is the number one criteria for success with your family, with your marriage, with your children, with your friends, in the workplace, the marketplace, in the community. If you have the ability to connect with people, if you can communicate and connect, not just communicate, it takes you and literally gives you and I a decided edge over others in the advancement of what we're trying to accomplish.
I'd like to suggest that there are 4 really powerful cornerstones, foundations, that we can stand on if we want our speech to be powerful and to make change in the world. Fortunately, these things spell a word. The word is hail, and it has a great definition as well. I'm not talking about the stuff that falls from the sky and hits you on the head. I'm talking about this definition, to greet or acclaim enthusiastically, which is, I think, how our words will be received if we stand on these four things. So what do they stand for? See if you can guess. The H, honesty, of course. Being true in what you say, being straight and clear. The A is authenticity, just being yourself. A friend of mine described it as standing in your own truth, which I think is a lovely way to put it. The I is integrity, being your word, actually doing what you say, and being somebody people can trust. And the L is love. I don't mean romantic love, but I do mean wishing people well. For two reasons. First of all, I think absolute honesty may not be what we want. I mean, my goodness, you look ugly this morning. Perhaps that's not necessary. Tempered with love, of course, honesty is a great thing. But also, if you're really wishing somebody well, it's very hard to judge them at the same time. I'm not even sure you can do those two things simultaneously. So hail. Also, now that's what you say, and it's like the old song, it is what you say, it's also the way that you say it. You have an amazing toolbox. This instrument is incredible, and yet this is a toolbox that very few people have ever opened. I'd like to have a little rummage in there with you now. Just pull a few tools out that you might like to take away and play with, which will increase the power of your speaking. Register, for example. Now, falsetto register may not be very useful most of the time, but there's a register in between. Now, I'm not going to get very technical about this for any of you who are voice coaches. You can locate your voice, however. So if I talk up here in my nose, you can hear the difference if I go down here in my throat, which is where most of us speak from most of the time. But if you want weight, you need to go down here. You hear the difference? We vote for politicians with lower voices. It's true. Because we associate depth with power and with authority. That's register. And we have timbre. It's the way your voice feels. Again, the research shows that we prefer voices which are rich, smooth, warm, like hot chocolate. Well, if that's not you, that's not the end of the world, because you can train. Go get a voice coach. And there are amazing things you can do with breathing, with posture, and with exercises to improve the timbre of your voice. Then prosody. I love prosody. This is the sing-song, the meta-language that we use in order to impart meaning. It's route one for meaning in conversation. People who speak all on one note are really quite hard to listen to if they don't have any prosody at all. That's where the word monotonic comes from, or monotonous, monotone. Also, we have repetitive prosody now coming in, where every sentence ends as if it were a question, when it's actually not a question, it's a statement. And if you repeat that one over and over, it's actually restricting your ability to communicate through prosody, which I think is a shame. So let's try and break that habit. Pace. I can get very, very excited by saying something really, really quickly, or I can slow right down to emphasize. And at the end of that, of course, is our old friend, silence. There's nothing wrong with a bit of silence in a talk, is there? We don't have to fill it with ums and ahs. It can be very powerful. Of course, pitch often goes along with pace to indicate arousal, but you can do it just with pitch. Where did you leave my keys? Where did you leave my keys? It's a slightly different meaning in those two deliveries. And finally, volume. I can get really excited by using volume, sorry about that if I startled anybody, or I can have you really pay attention by getting very quiet. Some people broadcast the whole time. Try not to do that. That's called sodcasting. Imposing your sound on people around you carelessly and inconsiderately. Not nice. Of course, where this all comes into play most of all is when you've got something really important to do. It might be standing on a stage like this and giving a talk to people. It might be proposing marriage, asking for a raise, a wedding speech, whatever it is. If it's really important, you owe it to yourself to look at this toolbox and the engine that it's going to work with. And no engine works well without being warmed up. Warm up your voice.
I can say to you, continue to do what you're doing and working on your stuff and working on your mindset and your presentation. Because once you open your mouth, as he said, the world will now know who you are. Your ability, and write this down, to tell your story is key. It's major in how you present yourself one-on-one. Why is that important, Mr. Brown? Because when you meet someone and you want to do business with them, people are asking 3 questions. One-on-one, small groups, or large groups. They're asking, who are you? What do you have? And why should I care? That's what they're asking. Because in the business where you are, trust is important, am I correct? Confidence is important, am I correct? There's a lot of skepticism around the industry because of things that have happened. A major investment that people have to make, am I correct? So now they're looking at you, who are you? And so your ability to tell your story. Who are you? What do you have? Your ability to communicate that in a way that will connect with people, in a way that will expand their minds, in a way that will touch their heart, in a way that will cause them to say, this is the person that I want to put my trust in. This is the person that I believe in this major decision that our family is about to make now that we should go with. How many of you know that's real? Raise your hands, please.
One of the things I observe is simply this. A lot of people are very careless with their language. And so, there's a huge shift. You can either be a victim or you can be a leader, but you can't be both. And if you look at someone who is a victim, a lot of their victimhood comes down to the words they use. I mean, the words you use either lift up your energy, the words you use either make you more creative, the words you use either allow you to do world-class things, or the words you use deny your talents. The words you use could reduce your energy. The words you use could hurt your leadership. So you have a choice every day at work and at home and out on the streets with strangers. You can develop a victim vocabulary or the language of leadership. And in this mastery session, I want to walk you through some of my insights on those. Well, words are powerful. I mean, words have destroyed nations. I mean, think about the great dictators. They're words of hatred. They're words of toxicity. They're words of breakdown. Cause the people around them to do sometimes incredibly terrifying acts. And then you look at people like a Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King Jr. or Mother Teresa. You look at the great business builders. You look at humanitarians. You look at a lot of the great artists, and they were so careful with their words. And their words lifted people up. And that's really what great leaders do. They use the language of leadership. You look at a victim, and they say things like, this is a problem. I've got a problem right here. Or I'm really scared about this. Or I hate that client. Or I hate this work. Or I'm sick of this day. Or I'm exhausted. Or I don't like that. Or she never likes me. It's literally the language of toxicity. And the words you use really are like a context or a framework or a stained glass window on the way you see the world. I mean, here's a game-changing insight. You see the world not as it is. You see the world as you are. You see the world through a lens. And your language forms that lens of belief. I mean, your lens of belief and your personal filter on reality is not really a true filter on reality. It's just a filter on reality that has formed as a result of all the words you've picked up from the moment you were born. So when you were a little baby, your mom and your dad used the language that they were taught when they were kids to use. And if they use the language of victimitis, and if they use the language of victimhood, like, well, you know, you can't do this, I hate this, I'm tired of this, money doesn't grow on trees, be ordinary, if you're successful, you'll be hated. All that messaging that we pick up from our parents and the media and the world around us and our peers, the little kids that we used to play with in the playground, or the friends that we had as teenagers, that will either lift us up or tear us down. So I guess what I'm trying to say, and hopefully I'm making the point clearly for you, but we see the world through this personal filter, and a lot of this personal filter that drives our performance and our behavior is really constructed from the words that we've picked up and then the words we are taught to use. And so the right angle turn for you to create exponential energy, mindset, productivity, creativity, results in the world, results in your life, comes down to, in part, a really intelligent use of your words. And like I said at the beginning of this mastery session, most people are really unconscious about their words. And that's why most people are not getting rare air results. So what are some of the words I encourage you to shift from? Don't talk about what you hate to do, talk about what you love to do. Don't talk about problems, talk about opportunities. Don't talk about what makes you tired, talk about what makes you inspired. Don't talk about your past, talk about your future. Don't talk about what broke your heart, talk about what opened your heart. Don't talk about what dispirits you, talk about what you are fueled by. Don't talk about the things within your life that are not working. Talk about the things in your life that are working. Don't talk about your pain, talk about your pleasure. And you know, if I were sitting with you right now coaching you, I mean, I am coaching you, and what I would encourage you to do as soon as I finish this mastery session is pull out your journal. And if you're not journaling, please start journaling, because journaling is a ritual you want to install into your days. Joan Didion said this: I don't know what I think until I write it down. Think about that. I don't know what I think until I write it down. And so in your journal after this mastery session, pull out a fresh page and draw a line down the center of the page and write about the language of victimhood and the language of leadership. And start to write down all the words you use and the sentences you employ that really are speaking, that are really victim speak. And then in the other column, I want you to start writing down the language of leadership. The language that as of today you will be committed to using, so that you start to use the language of someone who's world class. And I've given you some examples, but doing that exercise will make it really clear. And as you know, clarity breeds mastery. Bottom line is this: you are built to be a leader. You are not constructed to be a victim. And once you get your words right, you are going to start noticing daily shifts in your energy, your focus, your momentum, your confidence, and your output. And when you start getting those words right, you start lifting your professional life, your personal life to a whole new level of wow. And guess what? That is what you are meant to do.
Many nervous speakers distance themselves physically. If you've ever seen a nervous speaker present, he or she will say something like this: "Welcome, I am really excited to be here with you." They pull as far away from you as possible because you threaten us, speakers. You make us nervous, so we want to get away from you. We do the same thing linguistically. We use language that distances ourselves. It's not unusual to hear a nervous speaker say something like, "One must consider the ramifications," or "Today we're going to cover step 1, step 2, step 3. That's very distancing language. To be more conversational, use conversational language. Instead of "one must consider," say, "This is important to you. We all need to be concerned with." Do you hear that inclusive conversational language? It has to do with the pronouns. Instead of step 1, step 2, step 3. First, what we need to do is this. The second thing you should consider is here. Use conversational language.
Rapport is power. Earlier today we said anything you want to achieve, anything you want to learn, master, experience, there's somebody out there who has a life experience, the understanding, the network, the capital, the thing you need to be able to achieve it. But they're not going to give you what they want, or they're not going to give you what you want rather and need until you first give them what they want and need. And you're not even going to find out what they want and need until you first get in a relationship of rapport. If you don't do that, you're never going to learn anything. Rapport is power. What is a relationship of rapport? Rapport means total responsiveness between people. When someone is totally responding to you, and you're totally responding to them, you're in rapport. There's that connection, it's that spark that happens in certain communications or relationships. Now, everybody wants to create rapport, have it, but most people only get rapport with people who are like whom? Themselves, and they lose with everybody else, which means you got a very limited world. So we want to take it to a different level. So let's say, for example, if I said to you right now, guys, I want you to go out to a local restaurant or bar, and I want you to meet somebody, and I want you to develop rapport with them, a connection with them. How many feel like you do that no problem? Say aye. And if you're not raising your hand, you're probably selling yourself short. Of course you could. How would you do it though? You walk in this restaurant or bar, you meet somebody, and you engage in a conversation by asking a few what? Questions. Now, is it possible to ask a few questions and have a conversation and go, just die? Is that possible? Yes or no? So questions don't create rapport. Questions are a tool we use to dig for something. What are you digging for when you ask these questions? You're trying to find something in what? That's right. So write in your notes, rapport is created by a feeling of commonality. Rapport is created by a feeling of commonality. Rapport is created by a feeling of commonality. When we feel like we have something in common with someone, there's a spark. Now, here's the problem. If rapport is created by a feeling of commonality, most people try to get rapport by using words. But you've already learned something. What percentage of our communication skills are words? What percentage? 7%, which means you're leaving out 93% of your skills. Which is why most people don't get rapport with a large number of people. You know, what do? You walk in a restaurant or bar and go, hi, what's your name? Where are you from? Why are you here? The person says, my name's Habib. I'm from Iraq. I'm a terrorist. I'm here to kill people. And you go, amazing. Me too. No. See, words don't always work, do they? But there is something that always works to get rapport, and it's something called matching and mirroring. Matching and mirroring. Now, matching and mirroring came about 35 years ago when we've all done matching and mirroring our whole lives. But the person who pointed out was Milton Erickson. Dr. Erickson was a genius. What he did was, he was a medical doctor, but he also was a psychologist and a hypnotherapist, probably the best that ever lived. And people would come to see him who try to change everything anywhere else in their life, nothing would work. They see him for one session, he'd handle it. And the reason is because he understood something. He understood that you have both a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. And he knew the subconscious is more powerful. It's the part that makes your heart beat 100,000 times a day without having to think about it. So he knew if he could influence your subconscious mind, he could change anything, and that's what he did. But here's how he did it. He had polio, so he was in a wheelchair. So he spent an enormous amount of time studying people. And he began to notice something about human beings, that when human beings got together, if they got in rapport, relationship of responsiveness, they became like each other in a variety of ways. What he called, they mirrored each other. Now, I've taught this for 25 years, so I'm sure you've heard of it. I've written it in my books, and it's been taught in a variety of other areas now. But it's one thing to know it intellectually or to understand it. It's another thing to know it when you're doing it. And that's what I want to get you to do tonight, so you have a real experience of it that you won't forget. But here's the basis of it. People like people who are like whom? Themselves. And people don't like people who are not like themselves. To be more specific, write this down. People like people who are like themselves or who are like how they would like to be. People like people who are like themselves or are how they would like to be. People like people who are like themselves or how they would like to be. So question, I'd like you to think of someone you really, really like a lot. And then if you would, raise your hand, this person is either like you or they're like how you want to be. If that's true, raise your hand and say, I. Of course, that's why you like them. Now, think of someone you don't like. Not sure you like everyone, but if you once were an unspiritual person and felt these feelings. Somebody you don't like. Raise your hand if they're not like you or they're not like how you want to be. If that's true, raise your hand and say, I. And that's the opposite. People don't like people who are not like them or are not like how they want to be. That's the bottom line of it. So this concept, Erickson noticed, he used it in the following way. Watch me. If you came to see Dr. Erickson, instead of talking to you intellectually and trying to get through to you, he'd go right to the jugular by getting your nervous system connected to him, getting rapport. So if you came to him and you said, Dr. Erickson, I don't know, this is a waste of time. I've tried everything and I don't know, I think I should just go. He would do this, he'd go, I'm sure it looks that way on the surface, but you haven't tried this, so you haven't tried everything. And I think you should stay. The person would go, huh, something about this guy I like. you know, he's not over the top. You know what I mean? He's like really real. There's just somebody that feels down home and real to me, right? If you keep seeing this, Dr. Erickson, I've tried it. This is a waste of my time. I'm out of here. He said, you sit down. You haven't tried everything. You've not done this before. You're staying right here. Guy goes, hey, I like this guy. He's got some spunk, kick ass. Maybe he could do something. See, he became like the people he was communicating with. And what it was is whatever they put out, he sent the same message back, like biofeedback. And it entrained them to him. So that when he then told their unconscious what to do, their brain just did it. That was his power.
So my personal take on this, on improving communication skills, comes down to authenticity. I think there are definitely tricks and tools and ways of positioning yourself that can work. But at the end of the day, for me, it's about being authentic. Whether that's talking to somebody one-on-one, communicating just with them, or whether that's one-to-many, like this for you guys, or in front of a group, or doing a presentation. I think the authenticity is super important. And so if you're talking to somebody, why, you know, if you're trying to show appreciation, you're trying to thank them for something, then tell them what it actually means to you. If you're getting on stage and talking about your product or service, tell them what that actually means to you, whether it's the product itself, whether it's...
Okay, I think that's enough. I'll just close that quick. All right, what did you think of that? Good, hey. So I think there was some good little, what can I say, headings or aspects that came out of that. And, you know, if I'm going to actually just write some on the board, which I think is quite useful and for you to try and remember. So if anyone can remember from the first guy that spoke about the voice and, you know, about connecting, what came out from that, from the first speaker that you came across? Anyone remember?
The first speaker or second speaker?
The first speaker, the English guy on stage.
The one that talked about the hail.
The hail, yes. So that's true, hail. Okay. What else did he come across? What else came across in that conversation? He had a toolbox, remember? And there were certain things that he could use in that toolbox to help. And it was all about your voice and how you could control your voice. So if you're talking up here, maybe that's not a great way of actually coming across to a client. I mean, if that's the way you talk, then that's the way you talk. But you could also help with bringing in someone that could actually sit and be able then to be the speaker, or the person that has the gift of the gab, for instance, that could be able to chat to your potential client. All right. So he's talking about all with regards to how you can control your voice, how you can use your pitch. So like he said, where are my keys? Where are my keys? That's a different question that I'd be asking someone like Taylor. If I said, where are my keys? Then she would all get like uptight and everything. And immediately she does that rapport because she's picking up on my attitude, all right? Or the way that I'm presenting those words. But if I had to ask Emily, where are my keys? She would go, Robin, you've actually left them on the couch. And it's a different kind of way of actually having that conversation. So it's all about connecting with someone. We can communicate, but connecting is the important thing. All right? So it's all to do with your voice. All right? And we could look at pitch. We could look at volume control, which is probably the same.
Tone as well.
Say again? Tone. Volume, L-O-L-U-M-E, is that right? Or N-E? E, yeah. Sorry. My vocabulary at the moment is not very good. Okay, so that was with voice.
Also, your pace, though, you were saying. Not to talk too fast.
Exactly. And that's often my problem. If I'm excited about something, I talk really quickly because I'm really excited. But I've got to realize that people listening to me, I've got to slow it a bit down because they could also get quite anxious and get quite worked up. All right? So you are right in that sense in terms of pace. Anything else with regards to that first clip? Did you remember anything there? No? All right, let's move on. The second speaker, there was 1, 2. He was telling a story, right? He was all about, who are you? How are you going to help me? And what are you going to achieve? All right? Not specifically in maybe that specific order, but he was asking those questions. How are you going to help me? And that's exactly with the client. When they meet you for the first time, they're actually going to, or when they address you, they're wanting to really know those kind of 3 things in terms of what, how, and what was the other one? There was another question. I've repeated it now. Why? All right, that's all to do with telling your story. Who you are, how you're going to help them, and what are you going to achieve for your clients, okay? And in that sense, it also could be an icebreaker. So when we get to Tony Robbins, he just said, like, with regards to getting that rapport, you don't have to go in and to he used say for instance, a bar, and go up to someone and ask questions. You can actually say, I really like that jacket you're wearing. I had a similar one, and I bought that in England. And, you could start a conversation like that. So it's all about actually creating a connection with someone there, all right? So telling your story could also be a good way of connecting with a client, or even asking them. So, I hear that you've bought the Cumberland Hotel. Have you been in industry for a while in hospitality, or is this the first time? What's made you decide to purchase the Cumberland Hotel? It's icebreakers, all right? And normally that's what I would do. That's my personal experience. When I get to a site and I meet the client for the first time, if they offer me something to drink, like a cup of coffee, tea, or water, I would actually initially say yes. And the reason for that, it gets them to kind of feel relaxed in your company, all right? And to show them that you're also relaxed. So if that is an offer, I normally say, even if I'm not drinking coffee or tea or whatever, I'd say a glass of water would be wonderful, all right? Not to say maybe a gin and tonic or something like that. That's maybe going a little bit overboard. But you understand what I'm getting at in that sense, all right? So in that way, it kind of gives them a breather to think, now, I've now met this person. I see who they are. Now I can be able to get the cup of coffee, have that a bit of a break. It also gives you time to assess the situation. So that's what I would have done, is that I call it stealing with my eyes, okay? So I'd look around my environment that I'm in, and immediately then I could start seeing familiarity that I could actually see that how I could help them with regards to the research that I've done prior to the actual meet and greet, all right? So it could be in terms of I'm just using the Cumberland Hotel here, the old bar there, for instance, that could tell a story, and you could actually say, wow, we could actually look at using this bar and be able to maybe emphasize it more, all right? Or it could be a photograph on the wall. Those are all icebreakers. So you're not just going in straight bang with questions and making that person feel anxious. It's all about being able to have a few icebreaker conversations so that you can be able to ease into then asking questions. Does that make sense? Okay. So if we look at the next two speakers, 3 and 4, we can combine them together in a sense of how your body language is. The third speaker was all about standing like this. A nervous speaker talking, or a person, maybe if I come up to Terry and I'm talking like this to him, but I'm kind of standoffish and I'm a bit hesitant, he would feel the same way, all right? So in that sense, your body language is very, very vital in terms of how you present yourself, all right? That can even come down in terms of dress sense, all right? If you rock up there as a professional in your tracksuit, just say, then I don't think that would be a very good look to start with. Already the client is thinking, who are you? What are you going to help me with? And that's telling your story again. They've already created an assumption of you, okay? So it's very important the way you dress. Now, I'm not saying as a designer that you rock up in a suit. You've got to also be able to address appropriately for a site inspection, all right? Or a site meet and greet, okay? So in that way, you know, we would get into that a little bit later in terms of even a dress sense for a company that you work for. You almost get that rapport of what other people are dressing like so that you can mimic it, so that you almost are accepted and you become part of the unit or the team, okay? If you've got an eccentric style, so be it. I'm not saying that we all have to be like each other. I'm just saying that it could be a company policy to dress a certain way, all right? So that's what we'll touch on a later stage. Again, with regards to Tony Robbins, it's all about that rapport, all right? Mimicking or trying to get that connection with the client, all right? It's like, I'll just use an example. I used to play tennis when I was younger. And what I found out is that how I was winning or losing is that I would actually start playing their game, and often I would lose the match. Until my coach said to me, Robin, you are mimicking or you are mirroring your opponent's game when you should be taking control of the situation and do play your own game. Now, that was quite interesting. And once I had learned that, then I changed that. But I'm very much a person where I will, in your company, try my best to connect with you and getting to your level, okay, or your understanding. So when it comes to even a difficult client, again, we can also just try and work with that client by not maybe cracking a joke, but making light of a conversation. You probably find they are also on edge and very nervous, and often they come very standoffish. That's often the case. So we've got to try and change that by making them feel as comfortable as possible, and hopefully they rapport us, so they mirror us. So it also can work both ways. Does that make sense? Okay. So Robin Sharma said also words of negativity. So with your researching, you could also look at, even though you might have found out that parking's an issue, I'm just using that as a general thing. You can't go straight into the client and say, oh, you know, we can't do parking for you. There's just no way. We can't do parking for you. Already that's a word of negativity, all right? Change that and say, actually, there is this possibility of looking at maybe parking in another section or the property next door, putting out some options there, okay? So you could actually use those words in a different kind of way by actually just being a bit more conscious of what you say. And that also then helps the client feel a little bit more comfortable in a sense of finding a possible solution to a design problem. Okay. Right. So we could also say rapport here. And we could say positivity in terms of words. We could also say body language and how we present ourselves. All right, so those are just some key things that we could actually look at to help you. All right, so I'm hoping that the video will pick that up, but I've got not such a great marker here. So voice, I'll just repeat that. Voice, it's all to do with how you control your voice, pitch, volume, tone, pace. Telling your story, how are you going to be able to offer that as a maybe an icebreaker, or how are you going to be able to tell your story in terms of what, how, and why for the client. Then we go in terms of rapport or mirroring. We could look at positive words being used and body language. Okay. So that all comes through in terms of what I'll be actually observing you on in assessment 1B. Okay. So we'll be looking at that towards the end. Right. What's the time? Does anybody want a break? Or should I just carry on? Would you like a break? Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop the video. So this will be part 1 of 2 in terms of the recording. And then we will start it again, and that will be part 2 of 2. So that will be that.